And I was struck because I didn't really know about your early life, Miten, until I was, reading about you before we came to this conversation. But it's interesting, isn't it, that I think to quote your biography, you were opening for and playing with people like Fleetwood Mac and Hall and Oates and
Fleetwood Mac in the Rumours time, man. It was pumping, and I got every night to see them play Rumours. Play that whole thing with Lindsey Buckingham and Steve. Wow. Yeah, it was great learning. Fantastic.
I just saw the most beautiful video actually of I'm forgetting the name of it now, but a really classic song. But anyway, saw them backstage singing a cappella. It was going around YouTube a few weeks ago. It was incredible. But you said in the biography, or the biography says, that it was the distortions of the rock and roll lifestyle were slowly eating away at you until you eventually had to get out at, was it age 29?
Yeah, I guess so, something like that. I was in it through my 20s, and I got to a certain point, but you can only do that for so long and not, be sort of semi-successful, because in a way I was looking up, always looking up. And I always felt like I was on the periphery of everything, of life. I just felt like, where's the center? Oh, it must be, and then I was sort of in the so-called center, traveling with Fleetwood Mac and Cooder and Randy Newman, all these great musicians and songwriters who I adored, and I was still on the periphery, and it just wasn't happening for me. I don't mean successfully, I mean as a human being. I needed some life experience, and I didn't know where it was. And I had no idea until I walked out on my family and my record company and my publisher and the band and everything else, my wife, my son, carrying a lot of guilt, that suddenly life just hit me full blast. And it was, I just happened to, now of course, it's obviously there was synchronistic moment, but back then I didn't realize it was just somebody gave me a book from Bhagwan Sri Rajneesh. It's like, wow. It was a book on Zen. It was Zen Parables. No Water, No Moon, it was called. And you'll relate to this as a musician, because the actual story that touched me was of a Zen nun. And the story goes, the parable goes, that her name was Chiono, and she'd gone to the well to in the night to get some water, and she was making her way back to the monastery on the full moon night, and she happened to look in the bucket and see the full moon reflected in the bucket. And at that moment, so the story goes, it broke. And in that moment, she became enlightened, because she realized her life had been focused on the reflection and not the real thing. And she turned around and saw the real thing, the full moon. And that was it. And that was like my music. I knew it was somewhere there. It was behind me. So I knew that it was there, because the music and the songs that I was writing was a plea. Like Cat Stevens, he was another one. He was like, he was doing all, and he knew it was there, but he didn't know where it was. And one day he turned around, and that was it. So that was my journey into it. And I was like, if this community exists, I'm off, man. This is it. This is all I've got left. Because I'd got to a point where I was just kind of crying my eyes out on the streets of London, because I just couldn't live without my boy, my little son, and I couldn't live with him and his mom. I just couldn't. And it became a turning point, and I didn't know when I left. I thought, I can manipulate this, and then suddenly I realized I couldn't get back. Every time I went back, I couldn't get. It was just, so there was nowhere for me to go. And so, that book came at an incredibly auspicious moment in my life. I came to Osho, and he gave me the name Prabhu Miten, which means friend of God. I didn't have a friend in the world, man. And he didn't know, be a friend to yourself and befriend the godliness within you, And that's been my journey.
It's interesting because, you know, you were in Oregon with Osho, and like probably many people, I mean, not only do I have a few friends who have told me they were there, but, you know, the Wild Wild West Netflix show, which I watched along with a lot of people, and I think it gives a very particular view of what was going on there, which is not the view of most people I know who were there. It kind of gave a more slanted in the drama side of what went on there.
It's pretty dramatic. It was like nothing I'd ever experienced before, you know. This boy from London out in the wilds of Oregon on a ranch with the National Guard parked up there, you know, and you never knew what was going to happen. And Osho was, it was like the best therapy group ever, you know. It was like, you know, it wasn't in a meditation room in London. It was out there in the wild. You were living something. You were really living something. And you had someone like Sheila, who was our version of Trump, our version of Donald Trump, basically, you know. And so there was a nation, if you like, just like with Trump. And there's a lot of Americans that don't really want anything to do with him, but you're stuck with it. And then in a way, that's how we were doing it. I was just, you know, I was just learning and growing and being in a situation that I'd never been in before. And I think that's Osho's way. He was always like, he liked the edge. He was like, you know, you think you're enlightened, come a little bit further, take another few steps and see now, you know. And that's happened to a lot of my friends back then. After that, many people I knew were like, you know, fuck Osho, I'm not getting, that's me finished. Me, I never had 1 minute doubt. This was the most amazing teaching out of my life. So, you know, I was in, and I never, with the master, when you go into it like that, you know, you just, it's a love that it cannot be described. It's not the love that you feel for your girlfriend, your wife, your mother, your father, your children. It's way beyond that. And I never had any experience. I mean, what am I doing? I'm devoting my life to this so-called Indian guru who's not even in his personality. He's not even there. You know, so it was like this unfolding of life, and in a way that my eyes were open. I was actually communicating, you know, and I was actually listening, and I was learning how to be with another woman. I was learning how to breathe. I was learning what respect really is with a girl, with a woman, with whoever, you know. And it was a tantric experiment, a deep and fulfilling tantric experiment. And it doesn't necessarily look very attractive from the outside. It's definitely fodder for the media, that's for sure, you know, because it looks like one big party. And it was the edge. We were really learning how to be with each other and what that meant, you know. And so in a way, I was prepared for Deva. When the first time I hugged Deva, she was 20. I was 43. I'm holding this young girl and I'm feeling she's older than me. You know, she was so settled in herself and just a relaxed breath. And I'm holding and feeling, wow. So, you know, I could recognize that kind of depth of being by then, you know. So when she sat on the edge of the bed one day and said to me, will you listen to me sing? I'm like, sure. And, you know, and she could sing all the songs that I'd been writing and singing in the Buddha Hall. And she could sing all the harmonies because she'd had a musical upbringing, which I didn't know. Her mother was a classical musician. So suddenly she had an opportunity to sing with me and I could feel, wow, she's actually in tune. And she had a German accent, so we had to work on that, you know.
Yeah.
but but you know, she was awake, and when I took her into the Buddha Hall, into the musical ensemble after a few months or something, it showed her how to sing on the microphone and how it feels to have to play to a few thousand people and the band and the energy that is there. She learned a lot from those times in ashram, and she also understood silence. She really knew what that was all about. And it wasn't until I think about 7 years after that when she rediscovered the Gayatri Mantra. That was our turning point. Up until then, we'd been sharing, we'd left India after a few years. I think she was about maybe, I don't know, maybe 22, 23. I can't remember so much in time, but we were traveling around all the meditation centers in Europe in a little Mitsubishi bus that we bought for 1,000 Deutschmarks. We had no money, but we were, because of my kind of profile in the ashram, the meditation centers, if I called them up and said, hey, you know, would you like a weekend workshop? They would tell the people. We would go down there. We were all through Italy and Rome, and it was an amazing time. And we were just sharing, helping people to open their voice, really, helping people to sing and taking them into the experience that we'd had in the ashram of meditation, silence. So that's what we did. And we were actually in England. We were in England and at a festival, a sort of spiritual festival. And Deva comes to me and said, I've just heard these people chanting this Gayatri mantra. And she said, that was the mantra that I was born to. And she'd never told me before.
Wow.
So we didn't know. She didn't even know the name of it. She was just these mantra that her father had given her. So she had to ask, what is that? I said, this is the Gayatri mantra. Aha, that's called the Gayatri mantra. It's the first time I'd heard the word and her. But she came to me and she, so I, you know, I immediately went to A minor because I knew that was her comfort zone. And before long, we'd created something that she could step forward and sing, because up until then she'd been Paul McCartney to my John Lennon, you know.
Right.
Harmonies, you know. And so suddenly Deva found a voice there in mantras, and for me it was like, wow. This is something I can support. So it flipped from being Miten and his girlfriend to Deva Premal, and who's the guy playing guitar, you know?